Hi, everybody. I hope you're doing okay. I really do. It's a stressful time for us, and um, I want you to think about the most important things in life. Okay? Think about what's most important to you. And I think if you consider that list, it may boil down pretty quickly to the quality of relationships that you have with other people. So invest in those. All right, we're going to talk about later adolescence, and this will be another mini lecture, and I'll be putting a discussion question on this evening. It's Sunday night, around 9:30. So the first thing I want to talk about is the way in which we tend to all but vilify adolescence. There's a lot of stereotypes about adolescence, and I want to give you some information about adolescence that might interest you. Some ways in which the numbers don't always tell us what's really true about the success that adolescents have in life. For example, more than half of our all early adolescents volunteer. Half are in some kind of music or performing arts. Around 80% graduate. That number's been slipping a bit over the last 3 years, but it's still pretty good. I'd like it to be 100%, wouldn't you? About 35% go to college, something like that. And the quality of relationships has the potential to increase in a good way. Better problem solvers, better emotional possibilities, more energy, boy, that's for sure. And creativity goes way up. So these are all great things. So remember that early adolescents are interested in group identity and finding out who they are and who they fit with. That's really a core. And so what they're trying to achieve is a fidelity to others. Okay? About 1 in 4 don't get that. They have trouble finding a group to belong to. And those become what some people call isolates. And we need to do a better job of providing appropriate ways for people to find groups that they belong to, including ethnic identity organizations and groups. Well, now let's talk about specifically the later adolescence, okay? So this is the 18 or so to about 21, 22, and so this is going to be in the group that many of you are in. And we call this a later adolescent group, not to insult, but rather to talk about the way in which there is a transition to full adulthood, full autonomy. Okay? So some of the milestones here are that young adults in this age group feel much more like an equal adult and really much more able to have deeper romantic relationships that are sexual. They're more involved with things like work and deeper connections outside of work. And it's really this time when there is an intellectual, emotional, and social development that catch up with physical development. Okay, and although that statement is true, it's also true that there's a wide variation in the development of things like emotional and social skills. Okay, in fact, what we've seen is that in the last 50 to 100 years, 100 years at the most, there is a wider dispersion between the physical development and the social, emotional, psychological development. There's a greater difference between those in terms of age, so that physical development has outpaced the emotional, psychological, and social realms. Okay. What we want to do as a society and as parents for this age group is to encourage the refinement of vocational, practical, realistic kinds of goals and help young adults, later adolescents, something like that, move into complete independence. Now that's very much a Western thing. Okay, in many other cultures, that is not a goal. That is, you understand this clearly. This is not a goal. You would not leave the family. It would be considered insulting to move out on your own in some places. Yes. So collectivist cultures have different ideas about what independence really is. The maturation process in many cultures, if not most cultures, is actually one of taking on greater responsibility to provide for the entire family and all its generations, and that is really a goal that's very different, isn't it? So we want to be supportive as our children, either as parents or as a culture, move into greater independency. So this is all good stuff. Let's talk about a few difficult things. One is the eruption of depressive disorders. Now, as a group of disorders, depression and other depressive disorders, you likely know there are different forms of depression and different severities of depression. Remember, all psychological disorders can have mild, moderate to severe levels of intensity and severity. Okay? Taken as a group, it used to be that the anxiety disorders were number one, because it used to be prior to 2013 that there were more disorders located in the anxiety disorders section of the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, Volume 5. But those have been paired off and put in other places, including PTSD and so on. But depression and depressive disorders are sometimes called the common cold of disorders. They're not that uncommon. In fact, in college-level college-age females, they are relatively common to see. That meaning 20-30% or so of college-age females have some level of diagnosable depression. The other issue with major depressive disorder is it only requires a couple of weeks, as opposed to the more common 6 months window of duration, to diagnose, in particular, major depressive disorder. Okay. Bipolar disorder is not common. It's, across the bipolar spectrum, it may be as high as 5%. But bipolar 1 is less than 1%. Bipolar 2 and cyclothymia are less than 1%. So we're not talking about a significant contribution in the population of that disorder. Let's talk a little bit about sexual development. So sexual expression, sexual behavior in the 18 to 21, 22-year-old group and beyond is much more expressive of emotional qualities and the condition of a relationship than it is an exploitive kind of thing. So it's less exploitive. And so stable romantic relationships are much more possible. Individual relationships are much more important. And so across all kinds of relationships, this notion of trust and intimacy, mutual sharing, really develops much more deeply. Yeah? Okay. But it isn't true that everybody has sex in this age group. There are lots of people who wait, and for a variety of reasons, to be sexual. They may want to claim religious or moral teachings as reasons, or the fear of pregnancy, or as sexually transmitted infections, or they want to wait for the right person. So, yeah. Now, in this age group, the object, as opposed to early adolescence, is to form a sense of an identity and a commitment to family, work, and political, spiritual values. So a fidelity to values is the psychological task, okay? So there are different kinds of levels of identity, and what we're interested in is what's called an identity achievement, where a person really has a sense of uniqueness, a strong sense of their own values, a strong sense of who they wish to be in the world. And this is not an overnight declaration. This is a process that we go through of years. This is a transition from the 17, 18 age all the way. And the age is not the most important thing. I'm giving you just basic brackets to think about, all the way up to the mid-20s, really. This is a process, you know. There are more choices available now than there were 50, 100 years ago, for sure. You know, the average lifespan in 1900 in America was around 50. And the choices were limited. You just simply did what basically your same-sex parent did, and to do something different was actually somewhat unusual. You know, but now we have more choices. And with more choices comes more exploration, yes? So think about that, and I will speak with you again, and look for the discussion question to appear this evening. Take care. Bye-bye.